Hey there, everybody. As you can see, I've changed locations here. I'm hoping outside will help with the kind of country slow internet, but no, it doesn't exactly look like it's working, even though I tested everything. Give it a go, okay? So outside, it's a nice, warm, sunny day. Thankfully, a bit cooler than yesterday. Yesterday we hit 100 degrees here at our house, but so change of scenery. A little tree-side chat instead of a fireside chat. All right, well, here we go. We are talking everything we do. We are on chapter 3 now, titled How We Were Loved. And I think kind of just what got me going and thinking about this was really what does the word love mean? What does it mean to you when you hear that word? Do you end up thinking about big romantic gestures and horse-drawn carriages and princes and princesses from all the Disney movies we probably watched, and all the romantic comedies that always have those big grand displays of love? Or do you think of something a little bit less over the top? Do you think of your partner or family member taking care of you when you were sick? Or do you think about just the little things, changing the oil in your car for you, or smaller events than the big grand gestures? What does it make you think of? And to me, that's kind of just what the bottom line of this chapter really was, is you've got to figure out what love means to you. One thing I know, at least for me, as I've gotten older and been in a long-term relationship. I've been married for almost 12 years. Oh, and by the way, if the camera is moving, it's because it's windy out here and I'm holding my computer stand with my feet, so it's a little wobbly, a little wiggly. Anyway, having been in a long-term relationship, asking me now what love means to me, it's definitely action. It's not, the fleeting or intermittent grand gestures or a dozen flowers on Valentine's Day. It's the little things. And I think we all know, at least in terms of, that it's hard, it can be hard when people say a lot of things, but then there's no follow through. So I think, again, to me, love means action. And actually on page 76, Dr. Perry actually says that, saying that love is action, and it is following through and doing, and not just the talk. And I do apologize. It looks like the internet is just I guess you can't even get me started on lack of reliable internet service, but anyway. soapbox moment for another episode. Anyway, moving on. At the bottom of page 76, Oprah says that when children know the true feeling of quality time, they know that they're loved. And again, I think that just goes back to, it's not the words, it's the action. It's today. As you can tell, it does get windy here. So I'm not having a Beyoncé moment. But what happens when you live in the Columbia Gorge? So anyway, back to it. That at the core of what love is for us all is action. Um, Being valued enough by another person for them to spend their quality time with you, I think is directly related to developing a positive view of not only the other person but of yourself. That you're worthy of the time, that someone finds you valuable enough to spend that time with. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and go to page 82 as we bypass yet another graph and chart. But on page 82, Oprah describes a young person who had just recently lost her mother, and how, kind of summing up, it was that it was the little moments that meant more to her meant more to the daughter than the big kind of, what you might think of trips or things like that. But it was the little, as they called them, the Cheerio moments, where they were sharing cereal and sitting together. And that made me think of times that my mother and I would share when I was young, and we still do, actually, just a little less often. But when I was young and wanted to talk about something, or just kind of feeling down, my mom would take me to our local Dairy Queen in town, and we would sit in the car and eat our ice cream cones and just talk, just share things. She would let me talk and vent and say whatever it was that I wanted to say. She was just there and listening. And there was something a bit comforting about getting out of the house, where I was able to, relax a little bit more, and just, sitting in the car with my mom, just having her listen to me, was really comforting, and her giving me her undivided attention really made me feel heard and seen, and like what I had to say mattered. And I think also Oprah mentions that a bit, that we all at the core, we want, and that what we do and what we share matters. So going back to page 77 for a minute, both Oprah and Dr. Perry get into kind of the reasons why how we were loved informs the way those neural networks are shaped. And Dr. Perry uses the analogy of building a house to explain kind of how the brain develops from the bottom up. And I think that it's not only a great way to describe it and to make it very relatable for people to understand, but that the foundation is the key to the stability of the house as a whole, and likewise the stability of our lives, to be able to weather and make it through all the storms that are going to come at us, in our early years, because life is full of challenges. There's always going to be something coming next. And when you're young and you have received the kind of reliable, predictable support so that your brain can form those, what they call them, resilience, that sets you up at least to have a better base from which to work from, to handle all of these challenges. Just thinking it back for myself, we all have moments, and I think as we read this particular chapter, we can all think back and be like, oh, well, I can see how maybe that need wasn't necessarily met, or I was told to just, keep it down, keep it quiet, it wasn't a big deal, and now I have that same kind of attitude towards, emotional outbursts, whatever it might be. But I think this chapter, when we get down to the real word, what it means to be loved, it can, give you some perspective. It definitely did me, just to kind of sit and think with it. Moving back on to page 88, one thing I found pretty interesting was that can have multiple cues that bring about very different behavioral responses. And for me, two things came to mind with that. I guess two experiences, cumulative experiences, came to mind, and how my reactions to two different stressors were totally different. I know I've shared with you in the past couple of talks about my lasting trauma from all my dental work, and my not so nice dentist that I had when I was young, and how even now that when I'm having to go get any work done, I feel like I'm 8 years old again, and I kind of, shrink. I kind of regress, and a lot of times end up just falling down into tears. Realizing during that time when I was young, having no control over what was happening to me, even though it was necessary. I realized now what I was doing was, disassociating. I was, retreating into my little cocoon and doing whatever I could, to handle it that way. So not definitely kind of that disassociating method with how Dr. Perry talked about that. The other one was when it came to bullies and bullying and teasing that I experienced. Instead of retreating into myself for that, as I got older, I would get really angry and lash out. I definitely inherited my mother's way with words, and I definitely have the ability to cut some people off at the knees with using hurtful words and lashing out in cruel ways when I feel that I'm being attacked in any way. And that definitely, was like a direct fight response. I didn't even go through the flock and what was the other one? Anyway, the fear stage, all of that. It was, I'm gonna, you want to come at me with some words, I'm gonna come right back at you. Doubly so. So those were two things that really jumped out at me with that. Came up with anything that they recognized was going on when they were young. Did you have experiences where you reacted in completely different ways to any kind of trauma experience like that? So let's see. Like I said, this chapter really just made me sit and think about love and what does that mean. And I think as a child, you only know what you're taught and what you experience, and you create your own definition of love based on how it was displayed to you. And again, when you're really young and an infant and a toddler, you don't even really know what that, recognize the word, but you know the actions. And so my takeaways from this chapter, is that we're just all still learning how experiences that we had when we were a child are directly affecting how we navigate our adult life. And I think just the fact that you're reading this book, that I'm reading this book, it's work that we want to do. We want to figure it out. We want to, get down to the root of why it is we're doing the things that we do, especially the behaviors that we necessarily don't like, that we know we want to change. But I think when we're, being ingrained in a pattern, and all those neural networks and pathways were formed when we had no influence over, our role in all of it, it can be really kind of hard to process and to handle. You almost feel like you still don't have any control, but that, that's not the case. And I liked what Oprah said, that she hopes that by reading this book, will see that there is a bit of a silver lining. There is hope out there. Uh, but I think the only way that that will come to fruition is you have to do the work yourself. Um, it's hard work, and doing this examining, doesn't always feel good. So that's something that you have to just sit with and be comfortable with as well. Realize that those emotions and feelings are going to come up, and you can't fight it. You don't want to push it down. You've got to sit with them and then let them pass. Because we do have the power to affect change in our own lives. You just have to do the work. And so for me, again, like I mentioned before, love is action. It's the follow through. And that, is reflected in my personal relationships with my partner and my close family, but it also has to be something that I do for me. I have to show up with the action for myself. I can talk and say all these things that I want to do and all these grand dreams and things that I want to, maybe change behaviors. But none of that's going to happen if I do the work. So I think it was kind of a little come to Jesus, a little take me to the table kind of moment here. For not only does it apply to others, outside of ourselves, but for ourselves too. If you happen to read the blog post this week that comes out every week, I challenged people to show up a bit for themselves by scheduling some time, making yourself a priority, and give yourself an hour, 30 minutes, a whole day, a half a day, whatever you can do. But carve out some time that is just for you. No appointments, no to-dos, no I've got to do my 10 loads of laundry, I need to wash the windows, all of that kind of stuff. Just schedule the time and see what comes up, what you want to do. Do you want to take a nap? Great. Do you want to read a book? Awesome. But making that a practice to schedule in that time. I mean, we've all got responsibilities and commitments and people depending on us, but we also have the power to make ourselves just as important as all those other people and things. And it's a requirement in order to sustain yourself. And in doing that, it's an act of love for yourself. Because it all starts here. You can't expect, to be filled up from the outside if you're empty on the inside. You've got to do that work. So, challenge to you all watching. What are you going to do for yourself this week? What are you going to do for your 30 minutes that you're going to plan to not have anything to do outside of whatever it is that you can come up with? So that's my little 2 cents, my soapbox. Might get out and do something for yourself. Challenge for you. And I hope to see you next week. Still going to be working on trying to figure out this internet. I thought I had it today, but at least the background is nice and sunny and got a few Beyoncé hair moments for you. So we'll see you next week, Wednesday at noon for Chapter 4.